mentally prior to the game, having a plan going up there. Jake Epstein, Cass, and I always talk about this on the Lab Epstein Hitting podcast. It's like a running theme that we have. It's like the spine of our podcast. Approach and plan. If you don't have an approach, if you don't have a plan, you're not ultimately going to be successful. It's too hard to hit a ball, and this is just from a baseball perspective, at coming at you at 0.5, and you have 0.5 seconds to decide if you're going to hit that or not. Might be the same in softball, right around that area. It's just too hard to go up there and not actually have a plan and approach, and that's part of that big part of the mental side of hitting. That's the reason I'm bringing that up first.
For sure. And you know what? I think a lot of people are a little hesitant to dive into this because they found success at the younger ages, at 12, 13, 14, let's say, where they didn't really need a plan. Pitching wasn't super competitive. You didn't really have pitching coaches. The pitch calling wasn't super competitive. And maybe your plan was just, I'm looking for a good pitch to hit and I'm going to crush. That ability runs out at some point because pitching continuously gets better, and the better pitching is, the better pitching coaches are. All of a sudden, you're going to find yourself behind, and you're going to be like, "Wait, why is this not working anymore?" And you're going to try to go back to what was working. Okay, just go back to see ball, hit ball, and it's not going to be able to be enough. So yeah, I think the approach is tough, and I also think people's experience with how to train the approach is an approach does not mean overthinking at the plate. An approach is simply practicing how you'd study, if you will. Just like when you study for a test, you want to prep the weeks leading up to it, and then you don't want to have to worry about overthinking in the test. You don't want to be like, oh, what did my note say? What did this say? You want to prep with your approach. You want to practice what it's like to have this approach and that approach and this approach. And then when you get into the box, you're just falling into line with what you've practiced.
Yeah, and you've said it too, that this could be an endless conversation. We're trying to condense this down to 30 minutes, but this can be the mental side of hitting, an endless conversation. And we could talk all day about having an approach and a plan and trying to find what is really comfortable for you, but making sure that you don't overthink too, because again, you still have to, as Pete Rose said, see the ball, hit the ball. It does, but I think become a little bit easier though, if you have a good approach and a good plan. And that's where, you lean on your good coaching.
For sure. I think, I think back to when I was in college, like we're some of the best college softball players, and we were still being guided on our what our approach should be based on the research that our coaches had done. You're trying to gain a little bit of an edge. Pitchers already have the edge. You could get front toss and not go 10 for 10. Mm-hmm. Even just the simplest of front toss, you're going to miss 2 or 3 at least. And that's if you're like in the zone, right? And then so we think now we're adding spin, now we're adding movement, now we're adding the environment. We need a little bit of an edge as a hitter. So some of my favorite plans are just cutting the plate up into thirds and to 2/3, if you will. So it's like, all right, am I looking for the middle 2/3, the outer 2/3, the inner 2/3? And that's simple. And what I think as a coach, I need to work on is not all of my girls are going to, or my guys are going to visualize in that way. And they like to look at the strike zone or the hit zone. And they are like, well, I just am drawing a circle in this middle inside part. And that's where I'm looking. And that works really well for them. Other hitters and fewer, but they'll need to think, well, I'm trying to hit it to the pull side gap. And for them, that's looking middle inside pitch. So you have to kind of figure out what verbiage of the approach is going to work best for the hitter. It's trying to figure out which way does someone learn, right? Do they learn via textbook, via listening, via doing? And then once you figure that out, then you can start to practice those approaches.
So which one do you prefer? Just out of curiosity, the circle or the splitting the plate?
I liked the plate. Yeah. But it was, I guess maybe it was a combination. So I used to actually take a flimsy plate you could get at Dick's Sporting Good or something, and I would cut it up into thirds. And then I would actually take front toss and take away the third of the plate I wasn't focusing on. Or I would draw on top of the plate a smaller plate for when I had an advantaged account. So like 2-0-3-1, where the plate was just a little smaller. And then I'd have a plate that was actually an inch or two bigger for my 2-strike approach. So now I'm protecting. I have a little bit of a bigger plate. But I guess it was, that always resonated well with me. But I used to draw the strike zone and how it pertained to the plate all the time. I don't know why. I just would because I felt like if I could see what the strike zone looked like from maybe a bird's eye view, or maybe from this view, or maybe from a umpire. I don't know. I just felt like
Now,
I
when
could
did you?
understand it better.
No, it's interesting. When did you find time to draw this in high school
Oh,
and
I
like
would be
health
in
class,
class
like I
taking
did?
notes, and then like on the side of the paper, I'd be like, well, But I also had a hitting journal. So I was like, anytime I journal, I would try to draw a 3-dimensional view of the strike zone. And I had such a hard time with the high outside pitch. So I used to try to draw it from the high outside pitch angle, kind of. I don't know. I know it sounds silly, but